Hey guys, yep, you're reading it right. This is a Dice Tower giveaway. It's one that I built. This is Mike from the Well Did That Didn't Work crew. So, check out our Mar channel update and it'll give you more details on how to win this. So let's get right to this. There's going to be a lot of speeding things up here. As you see, I have a template that I drew out where I put every single one of the sides and measured them out. And went up to our local craft store. And this is called basswood that you're seeing. It's not a balsa wood. It's a little bit thicker. It's a little bit more heavy duty and will hold up when you're rolling dice for a long period of time. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take and overlay the template that I've got, and this is going to help me make sure that I get things cut and put where I need to. At this point, just like everyone else, just make sure you secure this down if you're going to use it as a template and cut over it. So we're going to have a little bit of speed up here so that you're not having to sit and watch every single second of this. Yes, I know, there's the tape problems, but it is what it is. Bear with me. It ends up good, I promise. Now, when I did this, I started this project with the intention, and you'll see that that's a utility knife, and I'm just using a straight edge here. But when I did this, I started with the intention of you don't have to have a lot of crazy tools to be able to do this. All you have to have is a good sharp utility knife, a straight edge, and some basswood here, and some super glue and some super glue activator. For those that are not craft savvy, super glue activator you should be able to get at your craft store. All it is the moment you spray any glob of super glue, that stuff is going to turn rock hard within about 2 seconds. So it helps you rapid set your super glue instead of sitting there for a minute, minute and a half waiting for it to really congeal. So again, you'll see me right now, and this is sped up. Just cutting through over the lines on my template. And one thing to note, I would not use the balsa wood. I would use something a little bit more durable, and that's why I went with the basswood. You're going to see here that this stuff is still a little bit on the difficult side to cut. For those that have never really done a whole lot of woodwork, cut with the grain, it's really, really simple. Cutting against the grain, you're going to have to sit there and mark and cut. And you'll see me here working through really quickly, just going back over each one of these cuts and scraping through and jumping between my utility knife and one of my X-Acto knives. And it did give me a little bit of grief here. I think the whole process actually took about 15 or 20 minutes to cut everything. And as I take out each one of these pieces, you're going to see that I'm going to leave it with the overlay. Now, for those who are paying attention right now, what you really see is I only cut out one side. Okay? So that L shape that you saw me cut a little bit earlier, that's only one side of this. Reason why I did that is because sometimes it's a little bit more difficult when you're dealing with just measurements to make sure that everything is 100% accurate, especially when you're cutting through a material and that material doesn't always cut straight. So I'm using my X-Acto knife here, my actual craft knife, and I'm marking out the true edges that came from the other side so I could have a good perfect match. You'll see that even on the back end of this, I had to go through and clean up some of that overlay that's there. Either that or you're going to end up with something that's just not going to glue right. And we'll speed this up. More cutting. And here I was trying to nick the edges of this, just trying to see if I could make it cut a little bit easier. And at the end of the day, no, just use the utility knife and spend a little bit more time. Now, I do not suggest using a jigsaw on this if you have it. The wood is still relatively thin and it will tear up under a jigsaw blade. I even tried doing this with a Dremel tool and it worked all right, but it kind of burned the edges and I didn't get as straight a lines as I really wanted. Now that piece that you're seeing me do right now, what I did is I marked one piece that was for the width of this project, and what I cut out originally was the back. Now the two pieces that you saw me mark right there are going to be the front cover plate and the bottom of the project. So I'm just taking and loosely cutting this out so that I can come back and clean up what needs to be cleaned up. One thing that you won't see on this video that I did find very helpful in working with this basswood is get yourself some either a fine grit file or a little bit of sandpaper, because it's going to help you clean up some of those edges and even knock down some of the super glue that you're going to see. This particular super glue that I'm using is just a Gorilla Glue. It's the medium consistency. There's 3 different types of super glue. There's a gel, there's a medium, and there's a light. The medium I found worked a little bit better. It didn't run too fast, and it gave me a chance to get the activator on it. And right now you'll see I'm just kind of fitting these pieces together to make sure everything's going to work. What's going to happen for each one of these pieces is I'm going to run a bead on here and then spray the opposite piece with the activator and then attach the pieces. Like you saw right there, it was about that moment that I made a decision to not put the bead on the large piece, because that would be easier to spray, and run it specifically on the edge of the other. This is the activator. These are only a few dollars a bottle and it lasts for quite a long time. So I did go quite liberally on the spray here. Just line up my edges and get them going. Now, that piece is already set. I'm sitting there trying to manipulate it a little bit because I had just a slight angle on it, and nope, it's already there. So, getting ready to move on to the next piece. You can see that that's already set and solid. And there's a couple little tips and tricks that we'll go through throughout the video here. But at this point you can see that I've grabbed the other side. And again, I'm going to take care of the edge here and put a bead on. And then come back and put the secondary piece on the edge here with the sprayed activator. And this is going to set quick too as well. Just a few seconds here. One thing though, when using super glue and when using activator, please make sure you don't have any super glue on your fingers, because you will super glue them together. I didn't do that here, but it has happened. I can call myself out on that one. Now, on this particular dice tower that I was building, you saw that there was a little angle there. So what I did was I came back and I used the front piece here to make sure that I've got the space and got it pretty much nice and square. We'll hit another speed up scene here shortly where we're working through the rest of the gluing. But again, just glue the edges, hit the other pieces with activator, and then hold it for a few seconds and you're good to go. In some cases, what you'll do is you'll go ahead and take the super glued piece as it exists right now. You could put that in place and then spray the edges of it in order to let any of the overflow glue get covered. But just off camera there, so I wouldn't be spraying anything on the bench, I went ahead and sprayed both sides. And I'm putting one side in at a time. Wanted to make sure it was nice and solid, so you see me here. I'm going to come back with a little bit of glue right there in the edges and corners, and then spray it with the activator. And we have our basic shape of this dice tower. Now, I went ahead and decided this was probably the right point to start putting in the angled wedges that go into the tower itself to allow the dice to go and roll. So I'm just putting a little bit of a tack here with the glue after I got the right angle. One thing that you may not see is make sure that when you do this, the angled piece right there, it sticks out just a little bit past or just even to the lip. This is something that I did have to come back and do a little correction on a future version of it. It rolls a little bit better and you don't end up with dice that get stuck back in the back of the unit. So I put the front plate on there to make sure I had the right spacing, and now I'm playing with, what angle do I want to put these in, because there's 3 angled pieces that go in here. 2 that are angled down from the back and 1 that's angled down from the front. Now, once I got the 2 pieces in there and I tacked them in and sprayed them, I realized that one of my template pieces was just a little too big, and I was afraid that it wasn't going to let the dice fall through. So, easy enough, just trimmed it up. And you'll see here that I'm just working that into position where I have an opposite angle, feeding down in there and hitting it with the activator. Now, since the main construction of the dice tower itself and the rolling portion of it is pretty much done, what you're going to see here is I'm putting on the front, and it'll be the same way where I'm just putting this into place, but because of how tight this was, I ended up just putting in beads of glue and working it down into the edges and then hitting it with the activator. Right there, one thing I do want to point out is I did have some space there, and I ended up having to use a thicker glue because I didn't back that middle piece off far enough. Here I grabbed a bunch of my Star Wars dice, and I wanted to make sure now that the base construction was together that all the dice were able to roll and nothing was going to get stuck and in there. So this is really where I'm testing it to make sure that, hey, it's a dice tower. Is it going to work with dice? After that, came back, and I tried to fit the bottom on there and realized that there was some really odd angles. So I just took the main dice roller and put it over what I had as far as spare basswood sitting there, and I carved it to fit. And then this way, I had a bottom piece that would fit over the entire thing and fit flush. So just making sure to check the fit there. And next, add your bead of glue. Spray the bottom with your activator. Attach, rinse, repeat. The physical construction here, I think, took no more than approximately 20 minutes. And that was with me realizing that I had a few mistakes in there that I had to work on and correct. Again, you're going to see here, I've got the gel version because I wanted to make sure that I have everything locked in very, very well. I wanted a really good thick bead of super glue down at the base of this. And off camera, so that I don't hit the super glue with the spray and activate it earlier than I wanted to, I spray the base, attach it, and I'm done. So at this point, you have a functioning full dice tower that has just not been decorated. What I would suggest here is you take the file, you take the sandpaper, anything that you have that you can kind of clean up any loose edges with, and you go clean it all up and make sure it's all nice and flush and fitting correctly. And I noticed that there was a bit of a gap down here at the bottom. So again, I just grabbed my super glue, put a bead on it, and filled out the gap in the edges, and then made sure that just hit that with the activator. So in one of our sessions, you may hear Rick make a comment about I pretty much build things industrial strength. Now you know why. Duct tape and super glue. Those two things get you pretty far in the craft world. Alright, here we go, back again. Time to clean up some edges. Same thing you saw me do on the inside. I'm just cleaning up what needed to be done and getting it all nice and flush. Now you could stop here as a dice tower if you wanted to. Do some decorations and it'll work. What I decided to do was take some of the extra trimming work that I had available to me and put a little bit of a lip sitting over the top here. So I'm just fitting each piece, finding out where I need to cut it to fit, and cutting to length and super gluing, spraying, attaching. For those of you that are artists, for those of you that do a lot of miniature work, and I know most people who are looking at this video are probably looking at it from a, I'd like to do this, save some money and do this on my own. It's not very difficult. If you got yourself about an hour, hour and a half, and you got the materials, you'll be through this just fine. At this point, once this top piece is put on here, you could stop with the dice roller entirely and just start doing any type of painting that you want to do. I would suggest that you put some Mod Podge or some acrylic base over the bottom of it. Let that dry, and then some primer if you want to. This is wood, so make sure that if you do want to paint it and you do want to do anything to it, that you do put some kind of primer or some kind of acrylic base on there that will act as a primer. I decided that I wanted to go for a little bit more of a true tower look, so I had some leftover balsa wood this time, a little softer, a little easier to cut, and I just started cutting, trim pieces out of there, and fitting them to each edge and working it completely around the entire project. Same thing, measure, cut, super glue, spray, attach. And aesthetically, you don't have to do it this way. You can do it any which way you want to. I've seen some different tricks out there. I think a gentleman that has a channel called Black Magic, he uses foam board, and he uses foam itself to create all the textures and everything on the sides. There's thousands upon thousands of ways that you can go through and decorate this project. And I'm not going to bore you with everything that I did, but as you saw right there, even those pieces that I was adding, you do have to come back and you do have to kind of take your utility knife, trim up a little bit, make sure that they're nice and flush. If you do a trim like this, like what I have chosen to do, again, I suggest once all the trim is done, I would suggest you go out to either your garage or in your craft room there. If you have the sandpaper or you have the file, make sure that you take all the edges and everything flush. If not, you're going to end up with a look that I'm pretty sure you won't be happy with. Now, I know I keep leaning in front of the camera, and, thankfully I don't have a bald head, but so now whoever our lucky winner is this time, you have now had a chance to take a look and see how your particular dice roller was constructed. Um, again, I'm not going to bore you with the painting details and what colors were used. I just hope you enjoy. Well, I just want to say thanks for watching, and hope this shows you what you needed to see from how to make your own dice tower, and for our lucky winner, how your dice tower was made. Thanks for watching. Keep on adventuring.